Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're going to be doing a RPG review. So we have Warhammer Fantasy 2nd Edition right here. You can see that nice glare. Oh, the glare on the camera. But we got Warhammer Fantasy 2E, so I thought I'd be reviewing that today. I've only done 2 other reviews. It's because I like to have a really strong, firm handle on a product before I review it, and that takes a while. I reviewed Pathfinder. I played that for like 2 years. I did review Song of Ice and Fire, and at this point we've been playing that for about 6 months. We've been consulting the Warhammer 2E a lot, and we've run a lot of one-shots with it. So now I do feel confident in reviewing it. There are a lot of other products that look very cool, like GURPS or Savage Worlds or World of Darkness, Fate, West End D6 system, but I just don't have quite that level of expertise that I want to review them. So we're talking about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, 2nd edition. So I'm just gonna open the book up and I'm gonna go through it. So we got the intro chapter, very generic chapter. We've got the character creation chapter, chapter 2, which is quite excellent. You've got your 4 Tolkien-esque races. You got your human, your elf, your dwarf, and your hobbit, or perhaps called halfling. I can't recall, but I call them hobbits. So those are fine. They're well detailed. They're balanced against each other. It provides a little bit on their cultures. Not a huge amount, but they're so generic. Like, Tolkien is so overdone. It's not that it's generic, it's just it's so overdone. They are probably right not to give a huge amount of detail. But then in that character creation section, oh no, so that's the next chapter. And chapter 3 is the careers. So chapter 2, creation. So you get your attributes and you get your race. Which is fine. The attributes are actually very well balanced against each other. They've got weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, agility, fellowship, perception, intelligence, and willpower. I believe that's all of them. So they're all balanced very well against each other. Awareness, very important. So they made it its own stat, which works just fine for me. Of all of them, maybe the weakest is willpower, but that depends on what you want to do. If you're a mage, willpower is going to be very important. Everyone else, it's only important if you run into a mage, generally. Now, there are optional rules for insanity, and for fear. A lot of people don't use fear in their rule set, but those rules are in the book as well, and those both involve willpower heavily as well. So chapter 3, though, is probably the best chapter in the book. And there's a lot of good chapters. This is a great product. So chapter 3, though, is careers. So it's like your class system. And basically, each career is basically a feat tree or a skill chain, something like that. So it's got 150 classes in it. And each one gives you a description of what it is, and then it'll give you the skills and the feats and the attributes associated. So if you're going through something like the innkeeper, he's going to have skills like blather, lip reading. He's going to have charm, consume alcohol, evaluate, gossip, haggle, perception. So those are very useful skills. Right there, we can see that the innkeeper class is very charisma heavy, very fellowship heavy in this game. And I'll give you a description of how inns work. And so each of these 150 classes has exposition on how the world works, how your character could fit into the world. So reading this, you'll get hundreds of NPC ideas as a GM, and as a player, you'll understand the world better. You'll know how to interact with NPCs better when you meet them. If you meet an innkeeper, you might know that he could read your lips because he's got lip reading. That's a class ability for him, a career ability. So that's great. You learn about the world. It gives you so many ideas, and it's all customization too. Those feat trains and skill trees, whatever you want to call them, feat chains. You don't have to take them in any order. So if I want, I could take Blather, and then Charm, and then Consume Alcohol. Or I could do the opposite. I'll take Consume Alcohol first, and then Charm, and then I'll Blather. Or maybe I'll be Charming, then I'll Consume Alcohol, and then I'll start to Blather. Whatever. So again, you have that customization. When you spend your XP in these careers is up to you, even though the total pool is determined by that career. That's what the career is. And all these 150 careers form a massive career tree. So if we look again at the innkeeper, his career entries are burgher or servant. So you can go from a servant to become an innkeeper, or from a burgher to become an innkeeper. A burgher is like a wealthy merchant kind of guy, much like the burghers in real world history in Germany. But the innkeeper, his exits are burgher, fence, merchant, outlaw, or smuggler. So you could advance from being an innkeeper to being a fence, or a merchant, or an outlaw, or a smuggler. So let's say you come in as a servant, you become an innkeeper, you make money, and then you become a burgher, a wealthy plebe. That tells the story of your character. You can make his history by going through the career tree. And what that means is you have so many modes of play. So the GM could say, everybody make a character who has 3 careers, or everybody make a character who's completed 2 careers. Or, because they're just skill and feat trees, the skills and feats are completely independent of that system. So you could say, we're not going to use careers at all. You can use any skill or any feat that you want. And the careers then are useless to you. They're out of the game. But they still provide that information on the world, and they can give you a lot of ideas. So I like to say the careers are optional, because you can ignore them and just do point buy. Because all the careers is a kind of a point buy guide, and you can do it halfway as well. You could go into a career and use that system, but still buy things from outside your career and maybe just charge double. And the same thing with the tree. You might be a innkeeper, and according to the book, you can only become a burgher, a fence, a merchant, an outlaw, or a smuggler. But let's say you wanted to become a highwayman. That's not on your list, but if you pay double the XP, sure, go become a highwayman. Abandon your career path. You could definitely do that. So there's so much flexibility in that career system. It's really wonderful. Chapter 4 is your skills and talents. Talents would be your feats. I keep saying feats. They're called qualities, or they have many names in other systems. In this one, it's talents and skills. So the skill and talent pool, the talent pool is nice, not huge, but it's very solid. The skill set, I would say, is too large, and they're not balanced against each other well enough. But it's a minor squabble there. So they're not that bad. Chapter 5 is the equipment. So you got your armor, you got your weapons. Now the armor, it's got hit location, but you can ignore that. So you can have a gauntlet, and now if you're hitting your left hand, it's blocked. The damage is blocked by the gauntlet partially. Or you could ignore that and just say, we're going to simplify rules. The suit of armor covers your whole body. So there's flexibility there in the armor. The armor scales linearly, which is accurate to real life, so that's fine. The weapons have very. This is an intentional thing that they've done. Is the weapons have very little differentiation. A sword, an axe, and a mace all handle exactly the same. And they've done that intentionally to make it easier to use the rules. So it is a more rules light combat system in that sense, which I like. And if you don't like it, it's pretty easy to homebrew in. Some differences. Chapter 6 is combat. This is a wonderful combat system. It's percentile based, so you roll against your skill to determine if you hit them, and then you roll some damage and you just throw that at them, and they'll deduct that. They'll deduct their armor from that, and then deduct it from their hit points. So it's just that easy. Now you'll notice that in that system, there's the opponent's armor, weapons, skill doesn't matter at all for you to hit them. You're just throwing your sword. And that makes it very, very fast. Instead of rolling, comparing, done, it's roll, compare to myself, roll, and then we'll compare to you, and then it's done. So, and you can do all those rolls with yourself on somebody else's turn, and then when it comes around to you, you can just say, I miss, I end my turn, or I hit for 5 damage, and then you throw that at them. Now the caveat is there's talents to block and parry and dodge. So you could say, I hit you, and the other guy says, I try to dodge, and then he rolls against himself again. So it's all against yourself, so it's really, really quick, fast, which is awesome. And then, so if he succeeds on his dodge, then your hit is negated, and the turn probably ends. You can move on the same turn as you attack, but usually if you're attacking someone, you'll just stay there and attack them. So the combat system is awesome, really fast. Chapter 7 is magic. The magic system is like the best magic system that I've yet to see. So I described all the games that I played pretty much. I played a couple others, but Savage Worlds, GURPS, World of Darkness, Pathfinder, Fate. This is, in my opinion, the best magic system. So basically, you have your magic power, and you roll. That determines how many dice that you can roll. Each spell has a target number you have to hit in order to cast. So the more powerful the spell, the more dice you have to roll to cast it. And doubles, though, cause horrible things to happen. Magical mishap and perils. They call it the Curse of Tzinch, who is the evil chaos god of magic. So it's D10s. So let's say the target to cast light is 5. So you'll probably roll 1 dice. So there's like virtually no chance of perils. If you roll a 1, they do have a minor peril. But so if you roll, let's say you roll 4, so you failed to cast. Oh well. But what if you really need that light and you can't even risk a 50-50? So maybe you'll roll 2 dice. So you've poured a huge amount of power into this fairly weak spell, so you're virtually guaranteed to cast. But your chance of having mishaps also goes up. So it's very, very fun system. And it's also got the winds of magic. So the GM could say, oh, you're in a low magic zone, subtract 1 dice, or subtract 2 from your total. Or you're in a high magic zone, have an extra dice, which makes it more likely you'll have perils, the Curse of Tzinch. So that is simple, and it's a lot of fun. It's balances well, because you really got to think about it, because some of these perils are like, you just die. Or a demon spawns out of your flesh, you die, and a demon attacks everyone. So that's pretty awesome. Also, just the variety of magic is huge. There's 8 schools, actually 10 schools of arcane magic, and I believe 10 gods for divine magic. And each one is completely different, although there are actually three other kind of base schools. So there's petty magic, which everyone can use, and then you get your specialty school, and so there's petty magic divine, petty magic arcane, and then there's, I think, petty magic hedge magicians who are just really useless. They have spells like protection from rain, so they don't get wet in the rain. But so each one is very different, though. So in something like Pathfinder, for example, you might say you're an illusionist, but you can still cast a fireball. So you're not really an illusionist, or you're a really shitty illusionist in a narrative sense. Whereas in Warhammer Fantasy here, if you're a shadow mage, which is their version of an illusionist, you really only can cast those illusion spells. So invisibility, creating an illusion in front of you, disguising yourself as someone else, and there's a couple others that are more specific as well. But your power set is very narrow. You can't do a huge number of things, but you can do a few things really well. So, it gets closer to that superhero style, which I love because it's got flavor, as opposed to, I can just do everything. Well, that's boring. That's generic. Because if you got a team of 10 guys and they can each do everything, you've got less to make each unique. Whereas if you've got 10 guys and they each do something very different, now they're each special. You could like one and dislike another one. They're more memorable. Huge advantages to that. So this has like I said, 10 arcane schools, 10 divine schools, and the 2 kind of generic schools that everybody gets, just to make sure that every mage does have like prestidigitate or read magic or detect magic, and every cleric can heal you a little bit in this case. But of course, if you're a cleric of Shalia, the goddess of healing, you can really heal well. Or if you're a light mage, then you have some healing as well, even though you're arcane, which is awesome. And then, of course, you've got, the cleric of the goddess of war, Myrmidia. They have that basic healing spell, but that's it. They can't really heal anyone. Then we got chapter 8 is religion and belief. So those 10 gods detailed in a huge amount of depth. Their holy books, their festivals, their tenets, their sins, their virtues, their history and relationship with each other. So this book is set in the Warhammer world, and it's really going to be hard to divorce it from that. So you couldn't use this book to make your own fantasy setting very easily. You could, but it would require some legwork from you. Now there's so much goodness in the book that even if you took that work, it's such a great platform. I think it'd be worth it. But the amount of detail it gives you on this setting is so huge. It's a really good setting. It's hard to find. It's really well detailed, which is also hard to find. So I fully endorse the Warhammer setting. I mean, we've been running a game in it, like I said, for a year now, or 6 months, or whatever. And it's going great. We can keep going back and looking at the book, or looking at one of the online wikis, or a splat book, and say, oh, there's more detail. There's even more than we thought there was. It's awesome. Chapter 9 is the Game Master, which is... it's okay. It gives you all the basics and a little bit more. It's not as good as like what you're going to find within the Ring of Fire, for example, where it really tells you about how to tell a story. It's better than most GM sections, but it's still, to me, I mean, I got a whole channel dedicated to GM advice, right? So I'm like the ultimate snob in this area. So for me to really give it the stamp of approval, it would have to be, ridiculously excellent. And while it is very, very solid, it's it's still not quite to that level that I would like it at. But it's it's a solid B plus effort in that chapter. Chapter 10 is the Empire, just about the setting. So like I said, it's a great setting. It's so deep and rich. There's so many areas and there's so many cultures. I mean, they've got ogres, which are detailed enough to be a player race. There's no stats for them here, but they've got them in that level of depth. Chapter 11 is your bestiary or bestiary or the mini monster manual, and it's very solid. You've got your goblins and your orcs. You got your skeletons and zombies. You've got like 4 different kinds of demons. The beastmen, so you got satyrs, minotaurs, centaurs, harpies, and then you got your animals. You got wolves, bears, mountain lions, giant eagles. So all the basics are covered. You could easily use that bestiary to run a whole campaign easily. And 12 is a small adventure in the back. Pretty generic adventure. It's better than a lot of modules I've read, but pretty generic anyway. So that is Warhammer Fantasy, 2nd edition. Look at the glare. Oh yes, the glare. But so that's Warhammer Fantasy 2nd edition. Just put that up there. It's a really excellent product. I would give it an A rating. Like I gave Pathfinder a C, and so this is well above that. The more books I look at, the more I appreciate this one. I'm going through GURPS, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome, and that's awesome, but man, I kind of miss how they did it in Warhammer. Like it was a little better in Warhammer. Or I'll go through, Savage Worlds and say, oh, the combat system's interesting. Not as good as Warhammer, though. So in a lot of ways, Warhammer has become my measuring stick of, is the game as good as Warhammer? Is it? Is it really? So I'd highly recommend this book to anyone who likes RPGs. Like I said, right here, you've got your bestiary, you've got your character creation, there's some magic items in there, but everything you need to play is in that book. It's not like Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, where you have to buy a player's handbook and a monster manual and a game mastery guide in order to play. You don't have to put down 3 payments in order to get one game. You can put 1 payment down and you get a whole game. You could run with just this book for at least a year. I could probably do 5 years with it, but my campaign style is slow based and it's character based. So if you're running for more than a year, maybe grab that. They have spot books too. So if you want to buy 3 books, get this one, get the Bestiary, and get Realms of Sorcery, because their Bestiary, I'll probably do a separate review, but it's very solid. And Realms of Sorcery is the best magic book I've ever read. And I've read a lot. I've read a lot of Dungeons and Dragons books, Pathfinder, like I said, GURPS, Savage Worlds. I've read through a lot of stuff, and to my experience level right now, Warhammer is the best. So that's my review of Warhammer Fantasy 2nd edition. I've heard the 3rd edition is not as good, but there were a ton of splat books for this, and they're the best splat books I've ever seen. So they're really high quality. They just feel like an extension of the core book. That's what a splat book should be. But go check this out, and I want to hear in the comments below, what's your review? Link your review. Let me know if you've had fun with this. Let me know if you hate it for some reason. Let's not make my opinion the only opinion that people can hear. Although, obviously I think I'm correct, but let's give everybody as many points of view as possible so you can make an informed decision about your dollars. Where your dollars are going, son. But I'm going to sign out now. I wish you all a good day and good gaming.